Local sports guru Ron Marchetti has a lot of items in his sports collection. Most of his collection is stored in his garage, which is really more of a museum affectionately named the Marchettium. Today he's going to share some of his treasures and secrets with us.
I paid at an auction for this, maybe $50 on the phone, a national, because I had to have this book, you know. And so that's where sometimes you just have to have it, you know.
I censored Ronnie because his wife doesn't know how much he paid for the Yankees comic book, and I don't want to rat him out.
In other words, don't get caught throwing it in. You know, if you get, once it's in there, you know, it's like water in the lake, you can't see it. But don't get caught taking it in there. So I had to sneak stuff in there. And that's what this shows always say, he says that about me, but look in there. How much do I stop him from getting anything?
I feel it's important to note here that Ronnie and his wife Chris have been happily married for over 50 years. Now let's get to some treasures from the Marchettium. Our first item is a bit of Hazleton High School football history from 1939. This is the program from the dedication of Harmon Geist Memorial Field in Hazleton on October 29, 1939. It was the home of the Hazleton High School Mountaineers back then, and currently the Hazleton Area High School Cougars call Harmon Geist home. It's had the same name for 81 years, but what was Harmon Geist called before 1939?
Well, it used to be Beeler Field, but it was the same field.
Okay, right there.
Yeah, but then they changed the stadium. It used to be like a baseball field. It was closer to Fulton Court, but then they moved it back. But it was the same stadium. You know, nobody knows who Beeler was. Beeler had to be somebody, and I looked in that books that Art Krause wrote for Hazel. Nothing about Beeler.
It's really hard to stump Ron when it comes to sports. He usually stumps everyone else during his weekly segment on SSPTV, but someone has to know who Beeler was. Like a good reporter, I did some digging, and in digging, I mean I texted Hazleton historian Charles McElwee, who did the digging for me. Thanks to his research, I can tell you before it was Harmon Geist Memorial Field, it was Bueller Field, named for Emil Bueller, who was a manager for the Duplin Corporation in Hazleton. Bueller played a major role in building the stadium for the community, and then it was eventually sold to the Hazleton School District. Let's jump to the 1940s and World War II and move to the hardwood. Hazleton High School fans had a lot to cheer about when Huey McGeehan was the team's coach. Yep, the boys of HHS were trending back in the day.
There's probably not another one like this. This here is a postcard that Huey McGeehan sent his son during the war, and this is the picture of the Hazleton team. His son was in the service on a ship. He was on the SS Cape Victory. That was the name of his ship. He sent it right to the ship. Huey McGeehan. Well, he was the greatest, probably the greatest coach. He was the first year of the Hall of Fame. He won 3 state titles.
The current gym at the Hazleton Area High School is named for Huey McGeehan. Now to the 1950s, when drive-ins like the Naughty Pine were hopping and St. Joseph's Gym was the place for hoops in the Hazleton area.
This is the first season ticket for 1952. The first year at St. Joe's, $3.50. They used to punch your ticket. Then you keep this and you put it in your wall, and every game they punch a different game. They don't do that now. It was the first year they won their first 10 games. They were 10-0. And then they played Allentown Canaries, and the largest crowd in the history of the gym. They were 2 deep upstairs behind the second deck on both floors. It was the capacity back then at St. Joe's was like 3,100. Then they dropped it to about, they only had the seats like this, so then they changed the seat and dropped it. It made the seats wider.
In front of that record-setting crowd, Hazleton lost that game to Allentown at St. Joe's Gym. 1 year earlier, Bobby Thompson hit the shot heard round the world as the New York Giants sunk the Brooklyn Dodgers at the Polo Grounds in New York for the National League pennant. The Giants would go on to lose to the New York Yankees in the World Series. And that takes us back to the beginning of our story and the first item in Ronnie's collection, that comic book featuring the 1951 Yankees.
And this is the first thing I ever had, 10 cents. I remember my mother bought it, maybe I was 10. My mother bought it at Neapolitan's grocery store in Wyoming, so we lived a block away. And that's when I became a Yankee fan. Actually, this one, the one I got sort of faded, and if you open the page, it'll just flicker away. So this one, I bought this at an auction.
Things are a little crazy right now in 2020, and Ron Marchetti is using his time at home to continue to preserve our area's sports history.
So I try and keep myself busy, and a lot of projects, you know, get my pictures straightened out, all old pictures. But the problem is I'm running out of projects to do because I don't know how long this is going to go. But so it's tough. It's tough. We just have to keep fighting this out. So this is like therapy, mental therapy. You got to keep your mind off, and you can't keep thinking about it. So everything seems like a treasure to me. But and I have so much I could really show you.
Yep, things are crazy now, but we'll get through it. And until then, in the immortal words of Ron Marchetti,
until next time, be a good sport. Stay loose.
For SSPTV Sports, I'm Ken Kara. On the very first episode of Out of Left Field, I visited the Marcadium. It's crazy. Let's take a look back at that story as Ron talks about another one of his treasures, a picture of the old Cranberry Ballpark in the Hazleton area, the park where Babe Ruth once played.
No, there's not a picture in, and I'll challenge anybody to show me a picture of Cranberry Ballpark. There's none available. That picture when you walked in there, I have a picture of Cranberry. That's the only picture that. And there's pictures of Cranberry.
How did that happen? That was such a special
I don't know,
place
because
in the
nobody
area.
took pictures back then. It wasn't like now you pull out your phone and take a picture. They didn't have cell phones.
You talked about Harmon Guy Stadium, but how important was Cranberry to the sports?
Oh,
scene in this
Cranberry
area, too?
Ballpark was unbelievably. It was the place to be. I mean, that was like being in the majors. You played in Cranberry Park. That was like getting to the majors, you know. But nobody has a picture from back of home plate looking out to see the breaker over the right field fence, and they had a man-made scoreboard, and they had ads around, just like Ebbets Field. It was. I remember it, but I would like to see it. That picture I have there is all right, but that's looking at the home plate. They might have pictures of teams with Cranberry in the background, but they don't have a real picture.
You have to hear this one story Ronnie shared back then about a game he saw at Harmon Guy Stadium.
I could flash back all the way to 1949. I guess I was about maybe 9 years old. And I remember the Hazel Township runner was running for a touchdown, Jimmy Casper, and he tripped over a dog. A dog came on the field. He tripped over the dog, and it was the first game. And it's the second game. He broke his leg. He was done for the year.
What's it called? What do they call on that? What do you do?
He got
at that point.
He was credited with the touchdown,
Okay.
but still he was done. That was his last carry.